So I want us to start today by telling you about 3 conversations I had this week with different families. And they were all about hospice and making that transition from a certain set of care to a different set of care. And so I had to try to figure out, okay, what is the difference? And I think in most care, we oppose life with death, right? And that's not a wrong definition, but hospice, I think, tries to do something different. It tries to put life and dullness, right, vibrancy against something less than that, and tries to say, how do we give you as much fullness of life during the time that you're here? Which may mean shorter period of time, but it's about how do we not leave you in some kind of state where you're less than the most you can be. And I think that sense of fullness versus dullness is what Bishop Spong is meaning when he talks about resurrection. Is he's trying to draw us to recognize fullness in life, not the other that we don't see. I mean, that we see too often, sorry. And so Easter is that thing of opening ourselves up to the fact that what seems to be dead ends and problems and pessimism isn't the bottom line. So Judy, kind of what we were talking about before is some of my friends have things that, man, I'm gonna have to say which Judy West. What we were talking about was about how some of my friends have very small or very negative or pessimistic views of life. And that to me does not feel like resurrection power is having its say. The resurrection opens up possibilities and fullness and hope. So what I want to talk about today is how is it that you have come alive through whatever resurrection and life has been brought to you because of the beliefs that you're stepping towards. Have you stepped away from whatever pessimistic or punishment field or all of that towards something that is more hope-giving to you? That's kind of where I want to go today. Where do you want to start with that? How would you like to begin telling me stories about you?
I don't know if I fully understand the question, I guess. Like, where have I gone from a place of fear to a place of hope?
That's at least part of it. You know, at least a lot of what if we take just the chapter from today, where Dr. Spong takes this chapter of Elijah and Elisha, is how is it that in the midst of this death, instead of just saying, Father, Father, I lost you, he also receives that double dose of Elijah's power. How is it that death becomes not a taker away of things, but a giver of, an extender of? And I don't want it to be just an academic thing. I want to know where it is that you have found that, what events or what people have helped you to be able to move into a better grasp of the world. And you may not tie it back to resurrection, but where has that happened? Where is vibrancy more present for you, and why? Did that help?
Yeah, I think for me, when I left the evangelicals and started an exploration of where I had so many questions when I left them, because I was still interested in the Bible, but I wasn't understanding. I wasn't sure where I wanted to go with where I had so many questions. I didn't have any answers. I just had tons and tons of questions. So reading Spong, McLaren, all these different people, Richard Rohr and stuff, and coming to St. Francis, and also the group in Phoenix I've been talking to and stuff has helped a lot. And I think one of the things I put down in my notes in the Spong book this week was the word Ubuntu, which is one of my favorite words in the world.
Say that word one more time.
Ubuntu, Ubuntu.
Yeah. Thank you. I just didn't hear you because I had something else that sounded right at the same time. And yes, I love that word too.
It's one of my favorite words. And I even wrote down all the stuff. It's like, what hurts you hurts me. What heals you heals me. What causes you joy causes me to rejoice. What makes you sad makes me weep. I am who I am because we are who we are. And it's that whole sense of total interconnectedness between the world and us and each other. And that whole concept to me should be the basis of how we do our existence, but as opposed to being travel, I guess. So that word gives me, whenever I start feeling just really, really depressed about reading the news or anything, I try and go back to that word and go, there are a bunch of people. I think most people in this world really do live according to that. It's just there's some who don't, and that makes it hard.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers it totally.
No,
or not,
I think that's exactly right. Ubuntu is a really good way to be able to see much of this, and that it's drawing us into that which gives fuller life, rather than, because the same person who sometimes gives you something also is the one who steps on your toe in doing so. And so it's kind of, where do I see the fullness of what they're giving, not however it is they're hurting. I remember ages ago hearing a song that continues to rattle around in my brain, even though I can't sing it at all. But it was a country song that basically said, I thank God for little houses where we bump into each other in the hallway because you're here in the hallway with me, right? If you live in a little house, you step on top of each other a lot, but it's because you're choosing to live and be together. And so I thought it's a great sense of what Ubuntu means. That the blessing you are is more important than whatever the difficulty is.
And the people who don't live with that seem to have megaphones about everything they say. And the people who do live with it have a sense of contentment. That means they don't have to shout and scream and try and convince everybody.
Yeah.
It's a paradox, because what the world really needs to hear is that whole piece. But often the ones who practice it aren't the loudspeakers.
Yeah.
So one of my resurrection times was when I started going to First Church. We were living in Polo Village, and I was on campus a lot. I was a student, but already married, and I would hear the chimes from First Church, the bells at certain times of the day, and it was just so inviting to me. And we had struggled in a conservative congregation and had come to the point of needing to leave. And so I started going to the early morning communion service on Sundays. And that was very sweet and very pleasant. But then I started going to the worship service, and Gil Zimmerman was the first pastor, but he was on his way somewhere else. And Dwayne Zimmerman came in, and Dwayne just spoke to my heart every single Sunday, and talked so much about everybody's included in the gospel. It's not only for this congregation, not only for the Methodists, it's for everybody. The good news is for everybody. And that was just a spark that I needed to expand my view of what could be and what is. And I used to have a whole collection of his sermons on cassette tapes. I don't know where they've gotten to, but
I never knew him. He died about the time that I started at First Church. I knew Betty really well. I knew their kids really well. But Dwayne passed away, and I sat at his service. First Church Phoenix, full of people, probably 500-600 people there, and people continually saying ways that he gave life to them.
Yep. And
And
he wasn't a shouter.
yeah,
He wasn't beating people over the head with anything. He had a very gentle delivery.
uh-huh.
But he spoke his truth, and it resonated with so many people. It was a gift to be a part of that congregation then. And I guess it was also a gift as he left. I mean, he'd had open heart surgery and was put on beta blockers, which may have accelerated the Alzheimer's or the dementia that took him at the end.
Yeah.
But Betty would tell us stories that he would arrange the chairs in the dining room in a circle, because he always did meetings in a circle.
Uh-huh.
Put a paper on each chair, and he'd be ready for his meetings, even though
Be
there
ready.
was coming in. Just those dear things that were indelibly pressed into his brain that never left him. And the connection with Living the Questions is that Jeff Proctor Murphy was one of the people who came and visited and brought his daughter when he would visit Dwayne. Even though, there wasn't much conversation, but having a small child in his presence was a gift to him.
Yeah, nice.
And so all those connections give me hope, I guess, that the places I've been, there may be somebody that remembers, and I certainly remember big chunks of places I've been.
Well, and Judy, you may not have used these words, but I'm going to tell you, one of the words that I heard when you spoke was the word beyond. What helps you see beyond whatever the present thing is, good or bad? And I think that's at least part of what resurrection is about, and for sure what the ascension is about. That Elijah went up beyond, that Jesus went beyond this present reality, and so we don't have the end of the story yet. And we hear lots of end of story all the time. When Judy West came in, we were talking about, I was talking to some of my friends on Facebook, and the topic is heaven and hell, and heaven and hell seem to be for them a beyond, but not a good beyond, like a pessimistic beyond, rather than something to truly draw them into their best self right now. And this is a beyond that empowers us in this moment. and gives us a vision to live better here.
Was this church in Phoenix, Judy?
Judy?
No, he went to First Church. Well, First Church in Tucson is where I fell in love with them, the whole family. And then he was district superintendent in San Diego, and then went to First Church Phoenix. So, and was also, I think he was DS in Phoenix too, but I can't remember.
He might have been, I don't know, I don't remember. I don't know his whole story. I just know that he was at First Church Phoenix, one pastor before I got there. Buzz was the senior pastor when I got there. I was an associate, and Buzz immediately followed Dwayne. And they'd been going to that church for some years. I don't know when they came back after the pastorate to be able to be just part of the church. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you from Arizona, Judy?
Me?
Yeah. I just
Yeah,
wonder, I don't.
No, my parents moved here when I was 9.
That's
Oh,
from
okay.
Arizona.
That's essentially your.
Yeah, don't you know, Judy? That's Arizona native definition.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I feel like it. I mean, I've never wanted to go back to where I started. But I was not born in Arizona.
Yeah, I came to Phoenix when I was, I think, 28. So. It's been a
Yeah,
long time.
well, it was 1946 and Speedway wasn't paved past Tucson Boulevard.
That's crazy, isn't it?
That's my criteria. I mean, you know, and when I was in England, a friend of mine took me to a museum where they were showing, you know, they had rooms set up like they do at the Arizona Historical Society, rooms set up in a period with the furniture and the appliances and all that kind of stuff. And there was my stuff. The stuff I grew up with, the stove and the ironing board and iron, and it was like, okay, I'm ready for the museum now.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So who are some of the voices who, like Dwayne, helped you to see life, helped you to envision something more than just this? I know, Judy, for example, your class up in Phoenix has been a good voice of something larger, better, different than what life might teach you.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, I would have never even, if it wasn't for the pandemic, I would have never found this group. You know, it's like, I did a book study a long time ago, at the very beginning of the pandemic with them, and just been doing book studies with them ever since. And it's not an either or situation. It's not like St. Francis or them or something. You know, I mean, I'm very much with St. Francis and stuff here, but they've also complemented. I mean, it's a United Church of Christ. It's First Church United Church of Christ up there. And I just love how the people, I just like the books they choose and the discussions we have and stuff. It's one of the people in it, the pastors, it's a female pastor, and her dad taught in seminary and stuff. And so it's just, it gets a really deep dive for me into some issues that complements what I'm getting at St. Francis.
Yeah, nice. I like that a lot. I think the hard part is that we often put ourselves in opposition to each other. Like one of my friends on Facebook said something about, these are all United Methodists talking, because United Methodist site, and they said something like, we've got to be more Baptisty because all of these people are running off to the Baptists. I said, what if we become really Methodist and see if that's enough for people to come to us, right? Why? But I think that market economics often enters into it. How do we compete against? How do we be, not let them steal our market share? And instead, I think we have to figure out how to be who we are so wonderfully well that draws exactly the people who need to be there for that. And you're right, when we get into competition with each other, that's not helpful. Hi, Martha, good to have you here.
Hi.
Welcome. We're talking about where is resurrection and ascension become real for you? How is it that it's become not just a story, but has somehow entered into giving you life, helping you look up and see more? So that's kind of where we're at.
Jim, talking about what you just talked about a little bit, I still get some notices and stuff from the evangelical church, University City Church downtown that I went to for a long time. And, they have this huge youth population, and they're just, they're like baptizing people like galore, and one thing is they're near campus and stuff too, but it's like, I was trying to think, why do they have such a vibrant, huge congregation? Why do the evangelicals have this? And I don't know. I think part of it is they wrap you in this warm cocoon of family kind of thing. You meet at homes and you do Bible studies in people's homes and stuff, and you just, I don't know, it's just, there's a feeling I had there that it's like I was included in people picked me up, took me all over the place with them. They brought me to committee meetings. They took me to homes. I was invited to parties. I went to all this stuff, and it's like, I just haven't found that anywhere. To be honest.
No, many churches become in a very real way family for each other. I look on my block growing up, and we were close with the Fairborns, who went to the same church, with the Morals, who went to the same church, with the Gibsons, who went to the same church. We were connected, and I should say to the Orgiles, who my sister was connected to. We knew the Mormons on that street. It's not that we didn't have all the other friends as well, but we were very closely connected to them because of the family aspect of the church that was there. And church took you into family, and that's not a bad thing. Community is an essential thing that sometimes we forget if we're not careful, because each person you bring in complicates community, right? For example, part of the reason why you're not there now is because you complicated that community in a way that you were not able to, and they were not able to maintain that connection. I'm not trying to say you're a pain in the.
I am a pain in the butt. I ask a lot of questions, and I'll ask a lot of uncomfortable questions for them.
Yeah.
Which is why I like Francis, because you guys handle my questions.
Yeah.
We don't always have answers for them though, Judy.
No, but that's the thing is, easy answers are not what I guess. Sometimes more questions is even good, but it's like, it's such, I don't know. It just is interesting how it all, I'm still putting it to my world together, but I have a much better handle on it than I did when I left it. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's difficult because smaller theology makes for an easier path together. It makes for an easier community because we're all on the same path. We all tell the same story. As we diversify, it becomes a much more complicated thing to keep us together. But maybe the goal isn't everyone together on one path. Because if I look at life, what we're trying to do is give life to each other. The same thing that gives life to me may not be what gives life to you. Now, Martha just left, but at least one of the things that gives her life is those paintings that we see in her thing, right? I don't need to do that. I can't do that. I don't know how to watercolor well enough to be able to do that, for that to be a life-giving thing for me. The looking at it is life-giving, but I've got to allow her to be able to go in a direction and take the time that it takes to do those types of paintings in ways that I'm never going to spend that way. And if we do that with every single person and let them find their own strand of life, it gets complicated and diverse really fast, doesn't it? Whereas if we say, everyone in this church, the way you express your creativity is in quilting or in watercoloring, then it's much simpler, right? But it may not be speaking to whatever is your art.
Did I tell you
Yes.
about running into the St. Francis member at Trader Joe's?
Oh, no, go ahead.
And we recognized each other, and so we danced in the aisles.
Nice.
It was, and then I met her later, and I danced with her, and then I asked, another lady was interested in what we were doing, so I danced with her too. We all were wearing masks, but it was just something about being out with other people at Trader Joe's was a joyous occasion.
Yeah.
Like Trader Joe's is a religion.
There is a certain amount of where that's true.
Yeah, I wish I had neighbors that belong to St. Francis. You know, nobody in my neighborhood belongs to St. Francis.
Right.
It would make another connection, you know.
But think of it this way. I loved my high school folks, you know, that I knew that, you know, they all wore orange and white like me because those were our colors, right? We were the Trojans, and it doesn't mean my high school was better or worse than the ones who wore blue and yellow. It meant that this was the family that I'd found that allowed me to be able to through those years find something. And yet I feel like sometimes churches try to be, you got to stick with just the orange and white the rest of your life. That's all you can do. Right?
Yeah.
I don't, Joyce and I are too far from you, though. I think we don't live that far from you, hon.
Me? You?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think we need to find some ways to be able to do that.
I'm at Skyline and Orange Grove, and I know we drove down the street you live on one time to get down to River Road or something.
Yeah.
So
Oh, okay.
Martha, you're just on the other side of Skyline on Orange Grove as well.
Yeah, I'm
On the west
between
side.
I'm between Orange Grove and Skyline and First and Orange.
Yeah.
Orange Grove goes into Skyline. I'm
Gotcha.
really near the junior high school.
Yeah.
and I'm on Skyline between just west of La Encantada.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
I'm pretty close to you, and also Diane and John Wilson.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It'd probably be really good for us to, and you know, and during the pandemic, some people did do this. One of the ways that some people survived the pandemic is they formed some heart circles, essentially, some groups that they just met on Zoom on a regular basis, and that's what helped them to get through.
Uh-huh.
And it might be helpful to resurrect some of those.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, I love the idea when we were having the small group churches or whatever they were called. I never did join one of those, but one time we did have, but they were meeting in person, but we could do it. But it would be good to do it by location too, in some ways. I guess we could do it in interest.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure all the painting people already are kind of connected, but
Sure.
but anyway, no.
And if you form pods and you're not really invited to one, that feels kind of weird. You feel
Yeah, I
really-
missed the family. I missed the groups. They once had family groups, and I missed that particular formation or something. I don't know if I didn't reach out and participate or something. But I don't know. We all want connections, and this is Zoom. Zoom has been real important to me.
And the good news is that if we formed a group, let's say that the four of us formed a group, we could decide how long we needed to be together on Zoom.
Mhm.
And when it is that we, the four of us, feel comfortable enough to go to Starbucks together or something, right? And when it is that we felt that we could make that type of different choice together.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And
I've often wished that I could, I've thought about, I've actually thought about, asking if anybody want to adopt me as their grandmother or something in their family. Adopt this old lady into your family, because my family doesn't live here in town, and I miss that.
yeah,
My granddaughter and daughter are visiting right now.
nice.
My granddaughter is busy eating and
Yeah.
sleeping, so I won't bring her to show you. But yeah, that connection is precious to me, and my daughter living here in town and actually taking care of me. I mean, she's handling a lot of things. I guess Amazon just tried somebody tried a trick on me, and Mary identified it as a scam. And I have this short-term memory problem. I mean, I'm definitely not perfect at this point. I'm getting, I did have my gallbladder removed recently.
And how do you feel post
I
that?
feel pretty good. I mean, last Friday I tried to go to a meeting and I couldn't stay. I was surprised. I thought I was doing okay, and but I wasn't. So so I'm still a little cautious about what I can do or not. But it's very one of those 4 little holes, and you take it out. And,
Yeah, pretty simple for a surgery.
But when you roll into the surgical room, that image keeps coming back to my mind.
Yeah,
It was this gigantic room with all these machines and
very,
all these
very
people
foreign
with their
space.
mask on.
Yeah.
And I keep seeing that image. And yeah. But
You may have to paint it, Martha.
what?
You may have to paint that image.
Yeah.
Maybe. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, try to get it out of your head somehow.
But anyway, I did go back to the doctor, and he said it was good to remove it because it looked like it was a very poor organ. It was could have turned into cancer,
But what you're talking about, both the gallbladder and the image of the room, those are important metaphors, if I can. For you, they're not metaphors, I get that. But for the rest of us to figure out, because at least part of the power of what Easter can be is moving away from whatever it is that's giving us the poor image in our head. Where is it that I'm seeing just the operating room and not living into whatever life that operating room gave to me? If that makes sense. So think about your what is it you've had to unbecome as you were trying to become something more different? What did you have to leave behind?
become something else.
Because that's at least part of it, is what weighs us down. You know, and if we use the ascension image, that Jesus was so light that he could just carry himself into the heavens, what is it that makes it so that you're not that light, that still holds you, you know?
Well, in some ways, it's the very things that I love the most, my family um, but then I feel very responsible for a lot of stuff. And it's that sense of I'm the one that's responsible that holds me
If I'm not
down.
here, then yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a very narrow tightrope some days, it feels like. Because it's exactly where I want to be, where I need to be. And yet it is the responsibility that keeps me from doing some things that might be good for me. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's
Yeah.
true anytime we just have responsible parts of us.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Judy West.
I was just saying it's like there's no middle ground, it seems. You know, you're either like, I would love to be in your position, but then I understand where you're at too. So it's like, you know, you have family all around you and stuff, and that can be a burden, but then it's also a burden not to have any family here.
Yeah.
So it's just really,
No, there's no right or wrong to it.
yeah,
no.
there's no right or wrong or anything. There's no, it's just, I don't know. It just is interesting how it's.
Yeah. But part of what you're talking about, Judy, is you're talking about balance, right? If you're in the desert, a little bit of water is going to help you. If you're drowning in the ocean, a little bit of water isn't what you need.
Yeah.
Right. And
Years,
so it all depends on your situation and what it is that's the needed part.
years ago, when I was going through a divorce, there were two other women in the same dilemma with me. And we had kids about the same age, so we would get together. But the difference was their spouses left them for other women, and my spouse just left because he couldn't be with me anymore. They kept complaining about how hard it was to relinquish to somebody else, and I thought, well, it's not easy
Yeah.
realizing that living alone was better than living with me. That was kind of like, well, I don't want to admit that out loud. It's pretty pejorative.
Well, but all of those kinds of things that we have to release are sometimes very hard to speak, aren't they?
Yeah.
And finding the space where someone gives us the permission to be able to speak those hard things, that's priceless. Right? Those people become literally the angels of our lives because they gave us that space.
Having recognized them and spoken them, then I can laugh about them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a pretty silly thing to compare yourself about, but it was a real thing for a little while, and it was eye-opening to me that there's just no right way to do stuff. Just no easy way to do stuff. But you asked about voices that were transformative to me. I never met in person either Alice Walker or Maya Angelou, but their writings just pulled me in directions that without them I never would have gone.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly politically active in the civil rights movement, but I read all that stuff.
Mhm.
And James Baldwin, and I just kind of saturated myself.
Sure. But kind of like what I said last week with Martin Luther King, where he became alive because of the ways that other people taught me about him. That's the same thing with Alice Walker. You don't have to meet her in person for her aliveness, her resurrectionness to be true. Right? because she speaks well through books, doesn't she?
Yep.
I
And
think
there's so many, I mean, reading saved my life as a child because it let me know there was a world outside the one I was living in. And it's continued. I mean, reading is my passion in this world. So it's like, it's how, I guess, through my health issues and stuff, with days when I can hardly move off the couch and stuff. It's like reading is my saving grace. I can lose, as long as I could be in solitary confinement, as long as you give me pen, paper, and a ton of books, I'm good.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
That-
funny, I gave up reading for a while, just watching TV and stuff. And then now I've started reading again. I've been, reading a lot of powerful books, Black history, Native American stuff, delving into a lot of different people's lives and stuff. And yes, it's been expanding, I think, where I'm at, because we're so isolated right now. It's been great. Of course, I do have the library is so generous right now because they don't charge you fines, I went in the last time, I think I had $27 or something in fines, and I bought the book back, so everything was forgiven. So
That's nice.
yeah, so they're being a library. As a librarian,
Yeah.
public libraries are just a wonderful thing. And of course, recently we went through Banned Books Week, which is the thing that libraries celebrate. And I used to always pull out all my banned books onto a book cart. And the kids will all check them out because they were banned at one time or another. They became very interested in them. And I've had parents come in and bring up a book to me and tell me, you need to remove this from the shelf.
Yeah.
And luckily TUSD had a policy in which, okay, there's a procedure here we have to follow. I cannot remove this book. You have to, there's a board set aside
You can do it.
to view this, and you need to apply to them for me to remove it. So we do have a freedom to read policy at TUSD. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a procedure in that way. So luckily I didn't have to really argue with her. I was protected. And libraries are really out there protecting people's right to read what they want to read. So
I think it's amazing how every year we celebrate banned book
yes.
week by somebody banning a book. Like this year it was Mouse. Right? And every year it seems like there's some book that they try to ban.
Oh yeah, there's always, there's something out there. There's a group of people who have that idea, and we know that reading is freedom. And there's a lot of people who want to limit our freedom. One of my particular issues is I was teaching in high school, and any sex education books, they always wanted to ban. They didn't want high school kids to read about sex education, like they don't need the right information, they much rather than read Playboy or something like that than to read scientific backed book. I know that was always one of the books every year. I think some parent came up and wanted me to take this off the shelf.
The hard part about that, Martha, of course, is that what they're really saying is not, is this a good or a bad book? It's that they no longer have control over what goes into their child's head.
Yeah.
Which they lost control long before that. I mean, not that they don't have some control over what goes into their children's head, but that's just them not admitting what is true.
Well, once the internet and the electronic stuff came about.
Yeah. I saw a thing the other day that said, you're worried about books when there is the internet, there's TikTok, there's.
Yeah. Just- So anyway,
Question for the book, actually.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a question in the book I have. It's on chapter 25, Elijah Magnified in the Unbelievable Book.
Yes.
The very next sentence goes, the Gospel of Matthew and Mark were composed while the Christian movement was still part of the synagogue. I don't know what that means. What does part of the synagogue mean?
Okay. So basically it's this, that Christianity grew up as a Jewish sect, not as a separate religion. And it went through that for 40, 50, 60 years. And then it began to move away from that, right? For a couple different reasons. One, because people like Paul were drawing it into Gentile areas, right? And they were saying this stuff that we're talking about for Jews also applies to you. You also can be part of this circle of love. So that was drawing it away. But also, kind of like today, the Jews of that day were saying, no, Judaism can only be this big, and we can't be big enough to include you too. And so in that type of movement, Christianity went off and became something disconnected to its parent.
Mhm.
All right.
The synagogue is synonymous with Jewishness. Is that what it's saying?
Yes, that's exactly what it's trying to say there. And so Judaism became more than just its Jewish roots. Matthew is trying to convince people why Jesus is the Messiah that the Jews have been looking for. Luke does not try to do that at all.
Mhm.
He doesn't care what the Jewish roots are of this. He's dealing with whole different other issues.
Yeah. I thought this I actually did the reading this time, and I thought it was fascinating how, like, they were talking about Elijah and all these different people who the resurrection, not just Jesus was resurrected, but all the people in the Bible were
Yeah.
resurrected or went up.
Yeah.
One by a chariot, that came and picked him
Yep.
up and
Yep.
took him up in a whirlwind.
Yep. And people will do a whole bunch of stuff trying to explain all that away or say, oh, that's different than Jesus's resurrection or whatever. But it's the same story retold. And I think that I think Bishop Spong
that's
is
what
very
Spong was doing is talking about, this is the story that has gone on with the Judeo-Christian thing from way back, and so it's a common ending to someone's.
And what's funny about that is, in the same way that Bishop Spong is trying to say that the writers of the Jesus text tried to draw people the next step beyond, the same people that deny that will also try to say, but everything was, I mean, I should let me say that differently. The same people who take it as for granted that Jesus drew us beyond will also say, but we can't go beyond that. Right? And at least part of what resurrection is always saying is what's the next beyond, and to not be afraid of that. And yet we continually are. I love the image of 2 doses of the spirit, of Elijah's spirit. Elijah didn't get mad because Elisha got more. It's just how it happens. Go beyond. Go ahead, Judy.
I like the sentence at the very end of that chapter 2. It goes, he says, gospel truth can never be fully contained in the vocabulary of our humanity. And I think that's one of the things that has to do with spirituality and what this is all about, going deeper into our humanity and stuff anyway, is all about, is the fact that we can't wrap our own minds around stuff. The closest we can get is to tell stories that are significant, give a significance to the meaning of what we're trying to say, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. The difficulty of that, Judy, though, of course, is that you're talking more uncontrollable. And we like stuff that we can control, keep together, you know, make walk down the same path that I understand already. And God, we all say that we believe in an infinite God, a God beyond description. We just don't know how to truly live in that space really well. That God is not understood yet by us or by anybody else. So we go back to limiting God some more. Somebody today said something
Age-old
like,
question, how do you define God?
how do you define God? Right? Somebody today said something like, in that conversation I had, said something along the lines of, that doesn't fit within orthodoxy, or use some other term, you know. And I said, so now we're trying to fit everything within orthodoxy. That's what has to be, you know, because Methodism has been really good at having a broad spectrum of, and what they were trying to say is, oh, it's got to fit in this space. I don't think that's ever true. That to me never feels like that. Hey, we've gotten to the end of our time. And so I need to set up next week. There's a lot of chapters. I'm going to send you 7 chapters. There's a couple of books you could read as well, but it's just a small topic: ethics.
Ethics.
How do we act? What do we do in the world? You know, and today part of the conversation, part of the way some people took the conversation was, well, if you don't believe in heaven and hell, then you should read Matthew 25. Now, I've read Matthew 25 a lot. It's one of my favorite chapters. There's 3 amazing parables, we call them. One of them is not quite a parable, but 3 amazing stories in there. And there's some things that are peripherally about heaven and hell. I wrote back, if all you read when you're reading Matthew 25 is just heaven and hell, then I think you're already in hell. And I will pray for your everlasting soul. I said that just to bug the conservative side of him. But Matthew 25 is about ethics. It's about how do we live in this space that we've been given, this time, this place, this community that we're at, and what is it that we are called to be in this space. So have fun reading those chapters and let it kind of draw you into those questions of what is most important and what should you do, not just you personally, but us communally as well. All right.
All right.
Thank you, my friends.
Lovely to see you all.
What?
I said it was lovely to see everybody.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes, definitely. Always love that.
Bye-bye now.